Welcome to The More Perfect Union, a podcast about the joy we get from American politics, or as we like to call it around here, real debate without the hate. Hi, I'm Kevin Kelton, a political activist and a moderate Democrat from Los Angeles, California.
Hi, I'm DJ McGuire, an economics instructor and a conservative Democrat, yes, there are still a few of us out there, from Suffolk, Virginia.
Hi, Greg Matuzak, a liberal Democrat and veteran of many political campaigns from Cincinnati, Ohio.
I'm Cliff Dunn, a Republican Party unit chair from Newport News, Virginia.
I'm Rebecca Kushmiter. I'm a freelance writer and liberal Democrat. I'm also a girl, which makes me cool tonight, from Kensington, Maryland.
So we have one Republican and one girl. That's good. Okay.
There'll be a lot of mansplaining tonight.
Absolutely. Sit back. The More Perfect Union can be found on iTunes, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Facebook, and at our website, moreperfectunionpodcast.com, where you can find host bios and commentary. So this is the week that we had to say bye-bye to a friend of ours. He's going bye-bye. Does everybody know who I'm talking about?
That's Melissa McCarthy, right?
Yeah, right. Her career just went sideways.
Yeah.
Sean Spicer.
Sean Spicer. He went out to the bushes and he never came back.
Yeah. Now he's still on the White House staff. I felt yesterday like the guy had died. I've never seen so many like obituary sounding kind of goodbyes to one person.
So, but we all saw the writing on the wall. I mean, we all picked it. We all wanted to pick him first in the Trump administration pool. I mean, from the very first press conference, he set the tone poorly. I mean, can anyone name one time that he was like, oh, he nailed that out of the park? He's done a great job. You know, I mean, it was bound to happen. It's just amazing that he's lasted this long.
I don't think he was ever first choice for press secretary either. I think he was going to be in sort of a backstage communications role from the beginning. And then, you know, everybody else that Trump picked had either plagiarized on their master's thesis or tweeted stupid stuff in front of the Berlin Wall. And you know, so he was kind of left with Spicer, like, all right, fine. You know, we can put someone who's not a hot girl on TV.
Yeah. I think this was Priebus's doing, and I also think there's a possibility that Trump waited until a day after the 6-month mark so that people wouldn't be able to say he didn't even last 6 months.
Oh, no, Spicer, you know what? The rumors I'm hearing is that Spicer quit because he didn't want to work for Scaramucci, and I don't want to work for Scaramucci, so I completely am Team Spicer on this one. For the first time ever, I'm Team Spicer.
Here's what I think happened. Spicer was the press secretary. The fella that left about 2 months ago was the communications director, Dupke, I think was his last name. Dupke.
Dubstep.
And so when they started using Sarah Huckabee as the face and the voice of the Trump administration, I think they led Spicer to believe that he was going to be upped to communications director. And when Scaramucci was brought in yesterday or 2 days ago, Spicer was a man without a country. He was no longer the press secretary, and the communications director job was filled. So I think that they just kind of screwed him.
Well, and also, I mean, how would you like it if your new boss came in and had absolutely no relevant experience? I mean, it would be...
What's happened to me?
Yeah.
And though it's an entirely different field, the same sort of thing happened with the vice principal at my high school. She was, she applied to be principal, got passed over, and ended up leaving right afterwards.
Some of us would argue that actually happened with Trump's ascension into the White House.
Yeah.
So what do you guys actually know about Scaramucci? I mean, besides that Sean Spicer's not fond of him, and that he says like really kind of crappy remarks about Huckabee Sanders.
Can he do the Fandango?
Yes.
Yeah. Galileo.
Did you guys not hear the comment that he made about the current press secretary?
No, I didn't.
It was a pretty sexist remark that he was going to suggest that she continue wearing makeup on TV, that was going to be something that he was going to advise her to continue with a makeup artist or something. It was along those lines.
Are you suggesting to me that Donald Trump hired a millionaire hedge fund manager with no experience who's also sexist?
No,
What are the odds?
I think the word was scumbag, but yeah, I mean,
scumbag works too.
that's
I mean,
the
Scaramouche
vernacular.
does rhyme with scary douche.
And of course,
Yes.
how shocking that there are sexist people still in Wall Street.
Yeah.
That's shocking.
Yeah.
Right.
Who knew?
Who knew? So what do you guys know about this guy? Because to be quite honest, up until 4 or 5 days ago, I really did not know that. I was not familiar with this name. Had anyone else? Was this a name that I should know?
I think Trump's been trying to hire him since day one. That's what I get from his background. That they wanted to make him like some sort of public liaison. Or I don't know. They've been trying to give him a White House job, but everyone keeps saying, "No, Donald, you can't hire him." And finally, he just did.
And this is the guy, by the way, that CNN had broadcast a story about someone who had taken a meeting with the Russians, and it turned out they didn't have their facts straight, and those 3 reporters ended up resigning or being asked to
Oh, that was
resign.
him?
That was
This
guy.
is the guy that got CNN to apologize for their mistake.
No wonder Trump likes him.
Yes, that's exactly right.
That's probably what brought him. That's probably what got him for this job. Because
Yeah.
as far as Trump is concerned, he's the only one who's Scaramouche is the only one who's actually beaten the media on something.
Yes.
and
Right.
that's what he wants a communications director to do.
And we're going to find out later that he actually did have a meeting with the Russians, I'm sure of it, about adoption, but
Yeah. Yeah. What did you guys think of his turn on all of the morning talk shows? I thought he did okay, which, by the way, probably means that he's only got 6 months left in the job.
Well, I know I do know that he contradicted Huckabee Sanders regarding the Russia sanctions bill. There's been a deal within House and Senate have now figured out what exactly the Russian sanctions bill will say. Huckabee Sanders initially said that Trump supported it. Scaramouche was like, I don't know whether he does or not. You'll have to ask him. So on his first day on the job, he kind of stepped in it there and contradicted his own press secretary.
I think you could chalk some of that off to it being the first day on the job, though.
Okay, so elsewhere in the news, Trump had his big New York Times interview this week, and the question was, what was he trying to accomplish from it? Why does he keep giving interviews to the failing New York Times, yet he's clearly using them to accomplish
Hey there,
something?
I'm a distraction! That is actually my theory.
What's your theory, Cliff?
That it was a distraction from what?
As a distraction from the dog's breakfast that the healthcare bill has become.
I completely agree with you, Cliff. It wouldn't surprise me if like the DSCC or RSCC or the RNC actually called the White House and was like, "Hey, would you mind having the president do a major interview?" Just to deflect attention away from the chaos in the Senate.
Yeah,
right
I
now.
mean, because if you look at, at least he didn't go back to Twitter for this one. At least he didn't go back to Twitter for this round. He went to the New York Times for a change.
Well, and then Twitter.
And then Twitter, right?
Of
I mean, it
course.
was like
Yeah,
a
Twitter was
1-2
dessert.
punch. Yeah.
He's tweeting tonight. As we record this, he's probably tweeting something awesome.
He tweeted something this afternoon. I didn't hear it, but I heard them talking about it.
I mean, if you read the whole interview, I mean, it was like just one thing after another. You're right about distractions, and if it wasn't like ridiculous things that he could say about the pardon, about the sessions, and we should talk about those. It was, hey, look at my grandchild. Isn't she awesome? She speaks Chinese. It was everything that could be a distraction as possible from the messes that's going on. But I don't know. I guess that's what these interviews are supposed to be, aren't they?
And also a handy history lesson on Napoleon Bonaparte.
Yes.
He did actually confuse Napoleon. He actually confused Bonaparte with his nephew Napoleon III in a couple of areas.
Right.
Right.
This was,
It was Napoleon III that actually laid out Paris, not
Yeah.
Napoleon Bonaparte.
exactly.
Yeah.
So
So what we can deduce from that is when he went to France, he had, sit downs with Macron, and maybe over dinner, somehow Macron was talking about French history, and I'm sure Macron got this stuff right, but Trump is such an idiot that he confused this stuff, and 1 week later, he couldn't even remember the difference between Napoleon Bonaparte and Napoleon III. I mean, this man is a moron.
You know what it is, though? It is something that I see as very familiar, and I thought Kevin might have too, because he grew up in Nassau County. Maybe you've been in California too long to remember this, Kevin.
Whenever you do this, I know I'm in for something.
No, it's not you. But this is the way Northeasterners behave. We talk, we exude confidence even when it's not there. We pretend we know stuff that we don't. And we figure if we say it with enough authority, people are going to believe us. I mean, we saw this kind of behavior from Joe Biden when he ran for vice president and when he was vice president. We see it from Trump now. You see it from every mayor of New York.
Excuse me. Caveat. These Northeastern men behave this way. Northeastern women preface everything with, all right, I could be wrong here, but, so that when we're full of shit, at least we have plausible deniability.
So DJ, what you're saying is Donald Trump is pretty much Peter Griffin from Family Guy.
There's a lot there is a lot of Peter Griffin and Donald Trump. You're absolutely right.
Hey, Peter Griffin was able to keep a marriage together.
So, but I wish Elena was here, because I would love to get a legal ruling about the pardon issue. And I know it was a distraction, but I'm fascinated about that aspect of the can a president pardon himself.
Well, let's go around. I'd like to hear what everybody thinks.
Well, I think legal scholars will be having a lot of fun over all the new legal ground being discussed these days.
Because was that part of the interview, or am I jumping forward too far?
No. It was the interview and the tweet. One of the tweet storms in the past couple of days.
Yeah,
he's like, I have absolute power to pardon whoever I want to pardon.
Okay, I'm sorry.
The actual. I'm actually staring here at Article 2, Section 2, the first paragraph, and I'm actually looking at it here. And the last clause states, "And he shall have power to grant reprieves and pardons for offenses against the United States, comma, except in cases of impeachment." So yes, Donald Trump can probably keep himself out of jail. He cannot keep Congress from impeaching and removing him from office.
Okay, so now I'm going to disagree with you. I'm going to disagree with you, DJ, but it's not just me. I heard Lawrence Tribe wrote about this, and I heard some other legal scholars on the various newscasts talking about this. If you just read that line, it might appear that that means that the president can pardon himself. But you have to take it in the context of the entire Constitution. I mean, we went through a revolution, so we did not have a king. The framers would never have given the President of the United States free rein to pardon himself for high crimes and misdemeanors. Now, I know you said except in the situation of impeachment. But we have three co-equal branches of government. And for the president to be able to pardon himself of any crime or any conviction that came out of the judicial branch would put the legislative branch above the judicial branch. So I think, and it's not just me, because I'm not a lawyer, but many legal scholars have said over the last week that it's a mirage, it's a fallacy to take that one line and interpret the Constitution, the entire Constitution, based on that one line. There's no way that the framers meant to give the president the power to pardon himself for crimes. And I don't think, even if Trump gets to appoint 2 more Supreme Court justices, I don't think he'd still win at the Supreme Court.
Okay, first of all, the notion that pardons are not mentioned anywhere else in the Constitution itself. And in fact, there was arguments within the Constitutional Convention, as to how absolute the presidential pardon power should be. And the convention decided to essentially make the pardon power absolute.
Not for himself.
If Mr. Tribe is using those arguments, frankly, then I have a good deal less respect for him as a constitutional lawyer than I did before we started this podcast, because that is utterly ridiculous. The convention gave certain branches certain powers that were not part of the other two branches.
So let me ask around. Cliff, what do you think?
Yes, I think he probably does have the power to pardon himself. Whether the founders intended it that way or not, they may well have blundered their way into it, and in some respects, it's not terribly different from him being able to simply have a bunch of underlings do all sorts of illegal things and then issue blanket pardons all around.
Rebecca, what do you think?
I think we're getting into weird legal territory, because one of the arguments I've been seeing against the president being able to pardon himself is that nobody can act as judge and defendant in the same trial.
Right.
So there's that argument, and obviously I'm no legal scholar, so I can't really say one way or the other. But I think this is all an intellectual exercise that's kind of fun, but I don't think it'll get to a point where Trump is ever being put in the position of pardoning himself. I think that, as was the case in Nixon, his successor would be the one pardoning him if we should get there. I think he'd pardon his kids, but I think Mike Pence would be the guy to pardon him if he ever needed a pardon.
And Greg, what do you think on the subject? Can the president pardon
all right,
himself?
I think he's already, if you look in his bottom left-hand drawer underneath just whatever he keeps there, like a
his
loaded
copy of Playboy,
his loaded gun. It's not just the copy; it's the copy with him on the cover. But because he
or
thinks
one
that's
of his
cool.
wives on the cover,
right? I think he's got a stack of pardons that he's already written out for Ivanka, for Eric, for the Kushmeister. He doesn't have one. Honestly, I don't think he's written one for Don Jr. because he's already written him off. He's like, that boy show no, because he hates him at this point. But he's written them out for the grandchildren, but he's got them all written out already with just fill in the blank, like Mad Libs, like name a felony.
So you think that Trump is sitting in the Oval Office signing pardons like Christmas cards?
Oh gosh,
basically.
he's just like.
you think Trump remembers he has a son named Eric?
Well,
That's what's really amazing.
Well, yeah, because he's like he always has he's got an alarm on his phone that says call Jared to take care of Eric, or take Eric for a walk or something.
Water Eric like a house plant.
Exactly, because but I think it's not a question of can. I think it's a question of will, or would he? And the question is yes. And then would we see a constitutional crisis? Would we see this get caught up in the courts? And the answer is yes, obviously. Would we see the Republican Party turn on itself? Would we see Hannity for years go, well, I see no problem in this? And would we see all of this? And would we see what's the word? A break in the country over this, because this man's like, I can do this? Sure. Or maybe, I don't care. But yes, it's not a question of can, it's would he do this? Where most people wouldn't even think about this. We're asking the wrong
the Twitter
question.
storm about all of this was to set it up for the base. Him saying, of course I can pardon anybody. I'm the president. Look at me. Rawr, I'm flexing. I'm really, really butch. And, and his voters are eating this up with a spoon. They think he's awesome and that he totally can. And that's all that this is. He's, this is flexing. He's looking for praise. He's basically saying, stroke me. Tell me I am as powerful as I think I am. Love me. Love me. For the love of God, my father didn't, so love me.
I just thought of an argument. This just occurred to me. If you buy Trump's point of view, which DJ does and which Cliff does, and I think even Rebecca thinks that there's a possibility, if Trump acknowledges that, then he's also saying if Hillary Clinton had been elected, she could have pardoned herself for any crimes that she supposedly committed.
No. She couldn't pardon herself because she doesn't have a penis. That's what's different. If you have a penis, you can do anything you want.
I think a large part of Trump's staying power, frankly, is that there are a bunch of voters out there, frankly, in both parties, sadly, who don't see appeasing Russia as a bad thing. And we need to remind voters, particularly those of us who are Trump critics, that yes, appeasing Russia is a bad thing. This is a regime that carved up Ukraine like Christmas dinner. This is a regime that is helping Bashar Assad literally pulverize his own people. This is a regime that is going on trial in September for trying to assassinate the elected prime minister of Montenegro because it didn't like the fact that he wanted to bring his country into NATO. These are not good guys. These are not helpful allies in the battle against terrorism. These are not nice white people who we should use for our racial war against people of color, which sadly I think is the situation that a lot of Trump supporters see Russia and Vladimir Putin. Present company excluded, of course. My point is, there are a lot of Americans who see appeasing Russia as a good thing, or at very least as a neutral thing. And until they are convinced otherwise, until they recognize how dangerous Vladimir Putin's regime really is, they're not going to go along with anything the Democrats want to do regarding impeachment or anything else, because they will not be convinced that a high crime or misdemeanor has been committed. High crime or misdemeanor is a political decision given by Congress. The fact that the presidential pardon power did not include impeachment, as I noted here when I read out the clause, shows that impeachment is a political decision. And the American people need to recognize the political danger of what Trump is doing. Far too many Americans don't recognize that danger, and far too few Democrats are working to explain that danger to the American people.
Well, that would take more than 140 characters. The American people maybe can't read that much. Only Cliff is laughing at my jokes tonight. I'm feeling very, very underappreciated.
The only woman here, and she's underappreciated. And you know who else was underappreciated this week? Attorney General Jeff Sessions, by his boss, Donald Trump. So Jeff Sessions was also in the crosshairs of the president this week because of a meeting that he had with Kislyak, where he apparently, according to the intercepted, was it phone recordings? I don't know what the intel was that was quoted by the Washington Post, but they claim that there is intel.
Yeah, if I may, the intel was Kislyak reporting back to his superiors on what he discussed with Sessions. So it was Kislyak talking to his bosses that was apparently intercepted by our intelligence.
But what did they intercept? Was it a phone call?
I'm not sure what the intercept was. I don't remember.
I think they were ravens.
Carrier pigeons. Carrier pigeons.
I'm pretty sure
It
they're
was whatever
using.
setup Jared Kushner wanted to use to talk to Russia as a back channel.
Yeah, it's their secure channels.
Right. And surprise, surprise, 2 days later, Kislyak gets recalled back to the Russian, I guess back to Moscow. And he's been replaced. So I predicted this on the show, I think 2 weeks ago. But I did not think that it would happen, days after it came out that he actually did indeed discuss sanctions and discuss the Trump campaign with Jeff Sessions back in April of 2016.
So
now, has Jeff Sessions been recalled to Moscow? That's the interesting question.
So at this point, is Sessions like guilty of lying to the Senate? I mean, with the whole Al Franken.
Yes.
I mean,
perjury.
This is it. This is perjury.
Yes.
I mean, this is pretty much evidence.
This is perjury. Absolutely.
I mean, this is hands down, because so many times I've said Sessions lied, and people are like, "Oh, you're crazy," and I'm like, "That's two separate things." But
and here is Sessions' defense. Do you know what Sessions' defense is?
What?
His defense is that no, we did not talk about that. This was Kislyak tooting his own horn and bragging and making things up to report back to the Russian high masters. So he's claiming that Kislyak is the liar, not him.
Sure, that makes...
At least somebody in the administration is willing to badmouth a Russian, even if only to save his own skin.
Right.
Look, full disclosure, by the way, before we go any further, is there anyone here that wants to disclose any meetings you may have had with Russians at any point in your life?
I am am Russian. My maiden name is Chudov. I can chase my great-great-grandparents back to Moscow. I could be a Russian spy, but nobody told me. It's entirely possible.
Kevin, what about you? Do you have any meetings you want to discuss with Russian officials?
Well, I guess I should come clean and acknowledge that, yes, in the 1980s, in the early 1980s, I did have meetings with Yakov Smirnoff at the Comedy Store.
Really?
And we talked about lifting sanctions on his audiences.
Did he say something like, in Russia you
What a
have
country.
meetings?
But in Soviet Russia, sanctions lift you.
Yeah, no.
That's right. Yeah.
In Russia,
Sanctions left you.
Exactly.
Whatever happened to Yakov Smirnoff? Is he still working? Is he
Yes,
still
he
around?
has his own theater in Branson, Missouri. And, to you guys, this is like something you've read about. I saw this guy perform every night for months, if not years. Nice guy, by the way. But I saw that act every night.
Hey, I remember he had a TV show on NBC.
No.
Okay,
Did he?
that must have been on for a minute and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. He was a defector. He played a defector who had to essentially assimilate his cousin, who was a more recent defector, into American life.
Wait.
I think you're thinking of Perfect
Yeah,
Strangers.
Perfect Strangers. That was Bronson.
No,
Pinchot.
not
that's a
Perfect
joke.
Strangers.
That's a
no.
joke.
Not Perfect
I'm just
Strangers.
kidding.
So
Okay.
you were saying, Kevin, so you saw him every night.
Every night I saw this guy's act. I'm just very proud of the fact that I actually know Yakov
Oh,
Smirnoff.
okay.
Of all the names I've ever dropped, I think I'm most proud of that one.
He also teaches a comedy and business course at Missouri State University and at Drury University.
That's great. No, I'm glad. He's legit. I like it.
So let's see what else is in the news this week. Oh, our friend Lindsey Graham.
Oh.
Who, I'm still pulling for him to win the GOP nomination. But our friend Lindsey
Keep
Graham.
pulling.
Greg, I remember when we used to talk about him back in October and September. We were making fun of him back then. But he came out today in support of the Dreamers.
Yeah.
What was that about?
So this is he did a press conference this week with Senator Dick Durbin, a Democrat, obviously, and in support of the Dream Act, and for kids whose parents brought them over when they were quite young, legal immigrants, and who've lived in America, grew up in America, and who now have no legal recourse and who might be deported to countries they have no identity, no real cultural connection with. Many of them don't even speak the language. And he's like, that's wrong. These kids should be able to stay. They do not inherit the crimes of their parents. And once again, proving that Senator Lindsey Graham is quickly becoming one of my favorite, if not my favorite Republican senator. And we talked about this last week about this rift in bipartisanship, but I love this because this is something that is obviously a bipartisan thing. That's great, and to see Senator Graham fighting for something that just makes such common sense on immigration is wonderful.
Graham's good friend John McCain has also been more pro-immigration reform.
Yeah.
Than against immigration reform.
Oh, exactly.
Look at the makeup of his state. I mean, John McCain would be pro-immigration reform given how close to the border he lives and how much of the essential workforce in his state is undocumented.
Well, remember, McCain was supporting the comprehensive packages back in 2006, 2008. So he has been pushing for a solution of some sort on this issue for quite some time.
Hey, since we're talking about John McCain, let's send out a collective good vibe to John McCain, or prayers, hopes, whatever's out there, because glioblastoma is a real horrible disease, and I wish the best for him.
Yeah.
Yes. And this is the disease that took Ted Kennedy and I think who else was it?
Oh, a number of people. But you know what? Yeah, I was actually thinking about this. Ted Kennedy was diagnosed early in Obama's term, if it was even the Obama presidency at that point. But Glioblastoma was a priority cancer for cancer genomic research after Francis Collins was first appointed to NIH. And Trump has actually kept Francis Collins, and I'm glad he did because he's a genius. And I'm curious about, kind of what progress has been made on the disease since it took Ted Kennedy away from us, and, what it means for John McCain to be diagnosed at this moment in history as opposed to 10 years ago.
I don't think much, because what I heard is that the prognosis with chemo and with radiation, the general prognosis for somebody with his condition is at best 14 months, although there have been people that have lived a few years.
I could go on and on about the blood-brain barrier and how difficult it is to treat brain cancers, but I'm not going to reveal exactly how nerdy I am about those things tonight.
Right, although I do like to point out for our listeners that Rebecca does have quite a bit of background in healthcare. We're not just up here spitballing stuff. Each of us has some background. Mine is, of course, knowing Yakov Smirnoff.
Right. Yes, and I worked with a nonprofit that dealt with cancer issues. So I got to hear from a lot of. In fact, I heard from Francis. I saw Francis Collins speak once, and he's quite possibly the most brilliant person I've ever been in a room with. I mean, he's no Yakov Smirnoff, but he's pretty smart. Not.
Who is? Let me bring up one last topic before we sign off, which is, I'm sure everybody heard that the Democrats, starting tomorrow, are going to unveil their new position papers, or whatever you want to call it, that they're calling a better deal, named obviously after the New Deal. And they're going to come out with specific proposals that they would like to take to the floor of the Congress and of the House and the Senate if they get power back in 2018. And it's going to be about healthcare. It's going to be about jobs. It's going to be about trade. Has anybody read anything specifically about it? Chuck Schumer was on the morning shows talking about it today. I think it sounds wonderful.
I haven't found any specifics either.
I've been looking for specifics. I haven't found any.
Yeah, because they're going to unveil it for the first time tomorrow.
Right. This is what we talked about with the Republican Party. They had 8 years to come up with something better than Obamacare, and they failed. I mean, there's no nice ways to say it. They failed in 8 years. And all they could come up with was not repeal and replace, just repeal. And then someday we could replace it with, something. And if not with something, too bad. But now they're actually saying, wait, if you put us back, here's some ideas, and we've got stuff in there. It's real stuff. And if you don't like these ideas, we have more ideas.
If you don't like those principles, I have others.
Government's awesome. I love this.
If you don't like these ideas, we have other
I
ones.
love this. I love this concept.
We'll focus group a whole new set of ideas. But
that's the point. It's better than becoming the party of no, which is what everyone, which Trump is branding us as saying, we can't get anything done because they keep saying no, which is just ridiculous when his own party is the one that's stopping most of the progress right now.
I think it's going to be very powerful, actually. I think that it's going to land. I think the media is going to cover it. I think it's going to put the GOP on their heels a little bit, because they're going to have to say why these ideas are not feasible. I think that this is exactly what the Democrats should be doing.
I think that this is something the Democrats should be doing. I think the question is whether the media will cover it beyond Donald Trump's next tweet.
Well, we'll see. You're right.
Yeah,
we'll see.
And I will withhold judgment until I actually see what the policies are.
And with that, we want to thank everybody for listening. Please follow us on Twitter at MPU Podcast, and on Facebook at facebook.com/More Perfect Union Podcast. And share our link on your Facebook timeline so your friends can discover us as well. And if you'd like to join our political debate between shows, join us in our Facebook group, Open Fire Politics. We're all there, and we'd love to see you there too. And so, until next week, any last words, last thoughts, last prayers?
You do know how many days Trump's been in office without a dog? That's ridiculous.
Greg, you're complaining that this administration isn't going to the dogs?